Alright, welcome to the stream. I'm just about to start a Charlize Theron study, and I'm working in a little bit of perspective. My UI is completely uncustomized so that you can see that side of it. I've got my little human head diagram here of some muscle names and some key muscle groups to pay attention to when sculpting this. I've basically focused on some recent pictures of her, but there might be some slightly kind of younger ones, but they're all kind of in their 40s at least, and that means that I don't have any mix up with how things look in terms of her like wrinkles, or the bones and muscle fat and that baby fat that you get, sort of plumpiness. So I think this is maybe a slightly younger version of her, but yeah, I just need some key features, the head shape to start with. So I'm not going to like get too fussy about things. I don't care if it's not accurate. I just want to use this as a study, a kind of approach that you might take when studying something. It's just, this is my approach. You can approach it any way you like, but it's best to start with a simple form. So before I start, I just want to kind of set a few things up in Zbrush, kind of as I go, and for that I go up to Preferences, Config, and Enable Customize, and that means I can now drag buttons around. And the first one I want to bring out is this Enable Customize, because I'll use it a lot on the fly to update my Zbrush UI. So I'm just going to have that there, and other things like, I guess I could bring in Store Config, because that's quite an easy one as well. So I'd switch that off and then Store Config, and that's basically now those buttons saved there. So that is the kind of basis to customizing your UI. So if I enable Customize here, I can start getting rid of things I don't really like. So all this stuff I don't use. I'll just use like the spacebar. It's got it all in there, everything that I need at least. There is some other things that you can switch and stuff, but I don't really bother about that. Now the active points and things, I do like to keep those, so I'll bring those over here. You could probably put them up here as well, but it's really up to you. Let's just put them there, nice and neat. Right, and I actually for some reason reduced that space. Don't know, beats me, but I don't need any of this because I get access to all this through spacebar. Right, move, rotate and scale, I'll just use shortcuts. I'll keep these two just for the hell of it. Move these over. Don't use the sculptures tool that much, but it can be useful. Like boolean, lightbox, homepage, yeah, I'll just leave those in. Right, so turn it off, Store Config, and that's basically the way Zbrush is going to start up. So I'll do Enable Customize again, and I want to sort of grab some other things. So from Document, I want the camera stuff. I think that's actually in a different area. Under Draw, there we go. So I want the camera, either focal length or field of view. They both kind of correspond to each other. You move one, the other one moves. So whatever one you want to choose, I'll just use focal length. In fact, no, I'll use field of view. I quite like field of view. I'm kind of game minded, and I'm going to put that up here as well because it's a fairly common thing. I'll just pop that up there, and that means I've got my field of view sorted. It's hard to work out what camera lens they've used for these. You kind of have to guesstimate. So I think the wider the lens, the more orthographic something is, and yeah, I think that means the sort of distance that it's comfortable. So if it's a smaller lens value, it's kind of more comfortable at a certain distance, a smaller distance, but I could be wrong. I'm just guessing. So something like that. But it's hard to sort of work out. It's really up to you how you analyse these pictures. Right, so I will also bring in Dynamesh. So I've got enable customize on. I'm just going to move that aside. That's this is called what's it called again? PureRef. So PureRef is free. You can donate. Just go to pureref.com and download that, and you can just copy and paste images into here or drag them in, and that's going to be good for our references. So yeah, Dynamesh. So that's stored under here, Dynamesh. So Control and Alt, drag it out. I'll put that there. I do want things like the resolution, sub-projection, refinement, I guess, maybe. I'll put that there anyway. I've never really bothered with that. Could be useful. Let's see, Z-remeasure is also good, but don't normally have that out, but you know what, I'll bring it out. And target poly count. So that's good if you've done a lot of dynameshing and you just want the geometry to be kind of nicer, and you can subdivide, project onto nicer topology. It's not final topology by any means, but it's definitely kind of flows a bit nicer. And with Dynamesh you get that horrible lattice and stepping. So if you draw like a diagonal line, see what I mean. Oops. So I do. I've lost all my shortcuts as well. So B Damien standard. I do a cut like that. And Dynamesh it. You see there's this kind of stepping here. That's because Dynamesh is just this cross lattice being sort of projected in a kind of box form. You can kind of see where it cross sections here in that kind of box form. Just where, oh, so it's just like lattices projected into the mesh. But if you were to use something like Z-remeasure, just clicking that button there, it should hopefully follow these lines a bit more. So it's just default settings. Yeah, it's much better at following the lines, and that would be better for sculpting on. But so you don't want to like rush into detail, because detail is like small, right? You want to put small things on a good surface. You want that surface to be good first. So that's why you work in the bigger forms. So the biggest form is the head shape. The second biggest forms like cheekbones, any sort of head muscles and bones. The chin, nose, obviously, maybe forming the lips and some of the muscles, the jaw muscles and things. If you really want those muscle names, if you want to get into sort of using those, I prefer just using like common terminology instead of the temporalis, and people then are like, what's that? Well, it's these muscles at the side. You can kind of feel them if you clench your teeth. You can feel it kind of pushing out. You got the, I think this one here, the masseter. The masseter, it's even the name masseter, it sounds like you're mashing food. So same idea, clench. Masseter's your kind of jaw muscle. You've got your zygomaticus, or zygomatic, minor and major. So those connect from this zygomatic bone down to the orbicularis oris, which is your mouth muscle. It's going to wrap around the way, and you can kind of see that. It's quite interesting because your topology flow will kind of match these as well. If you ever look at like topology images, they do try to follow, especially around here, try to follow around the nose and the eyes. A lot of the rest of it's kind of arbitrary because it doesn't move as much, but the more it moves, the more kind of finicky you have to be with the topology. Alright, so I'm just going to move that side again. So right mouse button moves the whole panel, left mouse button moves the image, Middle mouse button moves all the images within the panel, and you've got your mouse wheel to zoom. You can also hold down the control and right mouse, middle mouse. Anyway, there's a couple of combinations. Just look up documentation. There's some weird combinations of different clicks to flip images and stuff. Or there's a menu, right click and you can go to image and arrange or align, normalize, selection. I think there's some like modifies and flips and stuff. You can change it to grayscale. But just go to the help documentation for that. Right, so that's why ZRemesh is handy. So I've got that up there. What else can I bring up there just to help that? Adaptive size, curves in. Okay, I'll bring adaptive size up. So I don't really use much else. Just adaptive size, I guess, is a percentage that it can go away or from this 5K poly count. So you see it's like 5065 points. And if I made that no adaptive size and ZRemeshed that, well, that's giving me a little bit less, but that's only because it's kind of optimizing itself in the process. And good little trick is to sort of push something further to get it to like do what you want. So you like that, it looks more rounded, and then just smooth it out again. It's quite a good trick. So push it in, kind of forces it to do something like that, and then you can smooth it out again. So there's cool little tricks like that. You see you lose it the more you re-dynamesh. It's the more you ZRemesh, it's kind of losing that. So I'll put the adaptive size up to 100, see what happens. Yeah. So that adaptive size is kind of like, it's let it add more. So if I did that, yeah, it's a bit better. Now you click it again. Each time you click it, it's going to reduce it, or it's going to recalculate it. You see it's going to run 4,700. So I think this percentage is the amount that it can add if it needs it, or take away, because you can see it's going up and down. But every time I click it, it seems to be changing. 4,500, 4,450. Right, but every time you do that, it loses detail. It's kind of like Dynamesh. So with Dynamesh, I'll just click that back on. You'll see Dynamesh. You can change the resolution there, turn it off and turn it on again. In fact, you have to make a little change. You can turn it off and on again, or you can drag after you make a change. And the thing about Dynamesh is it will just fix the areas that you've changed. It won't really do much to the back here. Right, so I'll change that bit. But with ZRemesher, every time you click it, it's gonna kind of affect everything. Yeah, see how it adjusted things. So you have to be mindful of when you're going to introduce ZRemesher, or even further when you're going to do your actual retopology, which is pretty much near the end of the end. Once you've got that sculpt and you've got all your subdivs, you can, you know, take the high poly sculpt and decimate it, use that as a reference, or you can sort of step down a couple of steps and retopologize it there. Or if you wanted to go even further down and spit out that topology, the lowest subdiv, and refine it, if most of it's good. And Zbrush can do, you know, 50% decent job of the polys sometimes, not all the time, but don't use it as a shortcut. Just use it as a, if you know you're just making a sculpt and you're never going to make an animated character, yeah, you can get away with it if it's just going to be for some renders for your folio and you're going to do some Photoshop stuff on it, and it's just you're practicing your lighting and texturing and stuff like that. But for production, you really want to do manual retopology so that it's not only good for your folio, good for your skill set, It's better for the animator. Right, so let's get started properly. So press comma. Pressing comma is the same as lightbox here. Right, lightbox is basically your kind of project folder. You know, it's like not just a project folder, but it's like everything. You've got brushes and everything here. It's kind of like the browser. Okay, yeah, you want to save? No. Right. Okay, so I've got these. I'm still, thankfully, this is still active. I just want to do, I need to turn this enable customize off before I do store config. I forget why, but you have to do that. Now shortcut keys are a bit different. So I've got daemon standard here, right? And I want daemon standard to be a shortcut key. So let's just look at the brushes here. I'm going to dock that, and it's here, right? All these brushes that I tend to use are here. Now what I want to do is just use some of those brushes. I'm using my shortcut keys that don't exist yet, but if I do B, trim dynamic BTD, right, so that's one of the brushes I like to use. I like to put the intensity up quite high when I start, right, so I get this kind of flat brush, flattening brush. Clay build up, so that's already there. Clay tubes BCT, right, that's also a good one. Daemon standard, snake hook, so BSH. The move brush BMV. I'm lucky I still remember the combos. Got smooth, trim dynamic, daemon standard. I think that's most of them. Inflate BIN. Right, these are all pretty nice brushes for sculpting. Pinch, so BPI, I think that is, yeah. Right, so now that I've got most of these up here, because I've been activating them, they kind of get listed here. I could either start docking them to the viewport by enabling my customize. Now I just need to hide this so I can see where I put those buttons. It's not so handy them being there. I think it's because I brought this panel up, so I might have to move those. But I'm going to move those now, so I'll just do Control Alt and I can drag these over. Right, I want them to be in view. Enable customize and store config. Right, that's better. In fact, I can move that over a bit more. Right, so I could start to bring these into the viewport, and again, I don't need all this. I don't use these. I use the spacebar for literally all of these. Some of them I don't even use. Right, and I can bring them in here. So smooth is a default thing when you press shift. So I don't need smooth. Clay tubes, useful. So I'll dock that there. Now it is quite a big button. You see how it pushed the panel in. So I'll just get rid of that. What I can do is go up to preferences and interface. There's a thing called like button sizes, UI wide button. So you turn that off, everything will become smaller buttons. See that? And that just means more space for working. So I'll grab clay build up, standard, sure, put that in there. Daemon standard. Smooth I don't need. Trim dynamic, clay tubes, snake hook, move, inflate, and pinch. Right, so I've got them all there if I need them, and I don't need that anymore. There's another thing I want to show you though, is like a couple of ways of doing this is like using the modifiers on your brushes. So like strength and the kind of smoothing types and stuff like that. You can either use those, or if you get into Lightbox, you can actually get into, what I'm talking about is like using stronger smoothing. brushes, which I often find is useful if you've got something you really want to smooth it out faster. You can go into the smooths and then choose smooth stronger, and it says the smoothing is going to basically switch to that smooth stronger. So when I smooth, it's going to be much stronger smooth, and it's going to be my default. But what I want is to actually bring that out in here as well. So I've got my enable customize, so the smooth stronger, and bring that out. Right, so that should always end up there. Right, so instead of the default smooth, so I've store config. Right, oh, I turned that off first, store config. And now if I go back to regular smooth, yeah, it's going to be the default one. You see that one doesn't light up, right? But when I choose that one, it's going to say, do you want that to be your default smooth? Now this one gets highlighted, right? And it's much faster. There's another option to do, is to use the strength multiplier, and that would smooth faster. I think there's also like brush modifier, smooth slider as well, the tail of a stroke. Okay, I've never really looked at that. There's also like the modifier. No, that is the modifiers. There's also masking, smooth brush modifier set. So this is what I'm thinking of. There's a few different things here. And yeah, these can be useful for like if you've got a bit of cloth that's like a thin sheet and you want to smooth the edges or not. This min connected is useful, so I'm actually going to bring that out. So bring that out and put that there. Poly strength, control alternate smart brush, brush for strength. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've really used that. Weighted smooth, the 7 modes. Yeah, there we go. So there's your smooth stronger. So the other option is to bring that out, right, and use this. So when you switch that to 1, and you're using the default smooth, right? So you've got that little kind of regular smooth. You can actually switch this as you hold down shift. Switch that to 1. That now becomes smooth stronger. You don't see it activate here because that's a brush with that setting built into it, right? But it's as you hold down shift and you change this, it's remembered for when you hold down shift, right? So that's handy. So I kind of like that, I kind of like this, but I'll put that there anyway. And minimum connected points. Let's say you had, let me just clip that away, right? And I'll do delete hidden. There's another thing I like to have as a common thing in my UI is modify, not modify topology, but there is a couple of things in here that I do like, and that is in there. Okay, so delete hidden is a thing I like, but I often like these down the bottom. I don't want too much stuff up the top, so there'll be some things I've put down the bottom, like delete hidden, mirror and weld. What else do I normally have? There'll be other things like separating meshes, zero mesh, or tessellate, mesh, crease, actually I don't really have many of those. If you get into your subtools, there's more, so you can split. So I usually do something like split hidden, and merge, not boolean, not remesh, not project. Project I'll just kind of leave there. I rarely use project, it's kind of like its own little workflow at the end. Extract, yeah, just keep that there. These things I'll just go into now and again. Zero mesh, what was the other thing? Split hidden, so polygroups. Auto groups is a handy one. It's also like group visible, yeah, group visible. That's useful. You get it like pixel perfect, otherwise I'll get OCD. So you can drag it out and then go and find it again. I think if you move it properly it would be fine. So let's see, delete hidden. See, I've put it in the wrong place, so if I move it there first and then move it back, there we go. It's like out 1 pixel. It's just enough to like upset my my OCD, right? So we'll do delete hidden, right? So that gets rid of the unmasked. To make that mask, I just hold down Control Shift and drag, right? And if I tap Alt, if I hold down Alt, it becomes, I'm going to get rid of it, right? It's also got symmetry on. But what I want to show you is this minimum connected thing. So as I smooth the edges, you see how it's pulling it up. But if I change that, as I hold down Shift, I need to be in that smooth mode, and I bring that down to 1 or higher. Why is it not doing it? Minimum number of connected points to smooth. Okay, so it does it immediately there. Let's say 7. It's supposed to do something, but it's not doing it. Let me try ZRemesh that, so we can see it a bit better. Right, there we go. So it's not doing anything because the minimum number of connected points needs to be 7. In this case, is just like 2. So I change that to, I hold down Shift, change that to 3, nothing. Change it to 2. Now I get something. So it's basically that, right? And that means you can start smoothing the edges and make some cool things. I think you can also do the same if you've got like a different brush. So if I click on the snake hook, don't know if it only works for smoothing. I think it only works for smoothing. Yeah, it only works for smoothing, right? But it's useful. Some cool little shell shape. Alright, so back to where we were. I'm just going to turn off Enable Customize, Store Config, and what I want to do is start making shortcut keys for these. So clay build up, if I do Control Alt and tap and press my the key that I want. So I've got all these shortcut keys. I'm not going to tell you what they are and why I use them, but they're just better for me as just a single keystroke. They make things faster. Clay tubes, don't really use that one. Clay build up, that's enough. Snake hook. Okay, move. Inflate. Pinch. And that's my Damien standard. So you can see if I hover over that, it says next to the word, the name Damien standard, says I. That I is my shortcut key. There's G, Y, clay. I don't really bother with the clay tubes. Don't bother with. They're just handy ones. I usually use clay build up. It's a lot faster. Now another thing I can talk about here actually. Let's see if I make this have thickness. Good way to make something have thickness just to mask it and go to. In fact, a quick way to make thickness. Quicker way is to use the dynamic subdiv. Enable that. And you can see I can't see inside until I give it a little bit of thickness, and now I can see that side, so I can give it a bit more thickness. This is better than extract in my opinion. It's a little bit more friendly because you can see update live without pressing extra buttons. So when you're happy with that, you can click apply, and that's now got thickness. Now something I want to talk about is backface mask. Is another thing I want to bring out here. So if I was to inflate like that, right, you can see how it pulled. It also inflated that side, right? If I use the regular brush, make a shape, you can see how it's pulled that in, right? And I might not want that. You might want it, but you might not want it. Most of the time you don't want it, right? You're working on that side, you don't want to be upset when you turn it around and you're like, oh damn, I never meant to make that. Right, so what you want to have is something called backface mask, and I wish it was on by default. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to constantly go into it, and your brushes forget it all the time. You always have to tell it every time you start a session with ZBrush. You're gonna have to like recalibrate that feature for that brush. Right, so it's under auto masking. I'm just going to do enable customize and Control Alt click backface mask, drag that out, and I'm going to put it down here. It is a fairly common thing that I'll use. You can see it's grayed out, right? I'm just going to turn off enable customize store config, right? You see it's grayed out, means it's not active, right? So as I draw with this, it's doing that, right? So I'm going to click backface mask. That's going to be applied to the current brush, right? If I switch to trim dynamic, it's off, and I switch to dynamic standard, it's on, right? But it's remembered it, so now what's happening is it's sort of cutting through. That's what you're seeing there, is like it's cutting through, right? But if I do Alt with that, it's actually going to pull it that way, but it doesn't affect the other side, right? Same with the standard brush. Now it's switched itself off, so we're going to get that, right? I've undone, I'll click back face mask and click it here, right, or and click it there. Now if I don't have this up, which I don't need anymore, I can close that up there. I've stored the config, it's down here, not affecting the other side. Now if I draw this way, what will happen is the faces on this side are getting like pushed through, and you'll see it bulge through the other side. But what we're seeing is the inside faces because of the backface masking, not backface culling, which is different from the masking. Masking is to do with you using the brushes, culling is to do with the way it looks, the way it renders it. But if you go into visibility and turn on some, not visibility, display properties, and turn on double, you'll see both sides. So what's happening is that's bulging through, and there's the other face, like from the other side, we're seeing both sides of that, so that can get extra confusing. So I'm just going to undo that. Just be mindful of what you're doing when you're using your brushes. Backface mask is super useful, right? Right, so let's get started. I've got my UI set up to a good extent. I will build on it as I feel I need to as time goes by. I do like this panel open for something extra, and I can use that space a bit more as well. Right, so comma key, go to project, start with Dynamesh sphere, say no, I don't want to do anything. I'm going to Dynamesh this quite low, so I'm going to put it down to 8, turn that off and on again, and this is what we've got, right? Now I want to use the snake hook, and I've made the shortcut key J for that, so it's super easy for me to navigate and stuff, right? And I just want to make some progress with the head shape here, right? So I'm looking at this jaw, I know that the head is around about here, there's a whole volume of hair there to annoy me, but I'm just taking it easy. You know, I will get more accurate as time goes by, but I don't want to jump to the next subdiv like as soon as I've got just a shape. I want to get as much out of this as I can get. Right, and I'm just using move, and a cool thing with move, if you hold down Alt and push and drag to the left and right, oh, let's try move, and drag left and right, it actually pulls in and out based on the normal, the direction pointing out of that polygon. I can kind of shape some things there, right? Now if you were hasty and rushing your work, you'd be like, okay, I'm done, that's good. But there's so much things that you've missed. You know, you've missed the side of the head, and just a bajillion things have been missed here, right? I'm just making slow progress. Like, give yourself a good 10-15 minutes, not 1 minute, not 2 minutes, not okay, I've done a bit, I'm done. But give yourself a good bit of time to get some work done in it. You know, and a lot of this, I'm not even looking at the photos, they're there at the side of my eye, but all I want to do is get a rough shape. And yeah, you might be thinking, I don't like this bit, this is annoying me, I can't work with this. That's fine, you'll fix it later. You don't need to worry about it now. Like, if you really want a bit more, just re-Dynamesh. There you go, you've got it back, right? But then you'll be like, oh, I've lost that. This is not the time for fussing, this is just the time for getting the shapes in, and don't fuss too much at this point. Just keep looking at the references, just nudge things around until you get somewhere with it. You know, you got not too many references. You don't want to confuse yourself with too much reference, that's for sure. And you do want a few profile shots, profiles side on, and you do want a few front on shots as well. You're trying to work out where everything is. Now you have to be mindful. Women wear makeup, and you get that kind of, I forget what they call it, it's like the shadowing thing that they do, right? And they make shadows here. So just be mindful of that. That some of what you see there might be kind of darkened through their makeup job. I'm using build up here to build up a little bit of the cheekbone. Right, now I'm just going to step up the resolution just a fraction to the next one, smooth a tiny bit or whatever, and just redynamesh. Now I've got slightly more resolution, like a fraction more. Maybe I want a bit more than that. With the sliders in Zbrush, if you notice, if you drag this side and you just move up a bit, you'll see there's a smaller slider. It's actually like a fine-tuned slider. See, it moves less. So it's good for fine-tuning, and every slider's got that. A little fine-tuner. Right, so I'll just redynamesh that. I really use this sub-projection actually. Let's see what we get. Yeah, I'll just put that halfway. Right, so I've got lots more geometry to work with, but I feel like that's too detailed. I'm going to spend too much time wrestling with something. It's kind of like having too much clay in your hands and you're trying to model something. It's better if you build up in sort of chunks and sections. So I don't want to have too much resolution.